Good evening, everybody.
Wait, I'm not ready. I'm not ready.
Okay,
Have we
well,
started yet?
let's just wait till David's ready.
Okay.
So, John, how was your day today?
Oh, I'm doing quite well, Chad. I
Yeah.
guess if we're going to be waiting when the puppet's ready, it's going to be quicker than the replay tonight between Oklahoma and West Virginia.
Oh, yeah. That took forever.
David, you ready yet?
Well, I don't. Well, you just don't start it yet.
Okay. Yeah, pretty good game between Oklahoma and West Virginia.
Yeah. All right. I guess I'm ready.
Okay, because we've been going for about 5 minutes already.
Oh,
Good evening, everybody.
come on. You got to keep it moving.
Uh, Welcome to Hoops HD's Under the Radar podcast. I'm your host, Chad Sherwood. Joining me, John Stalika and David Griggs. This is the podcast where we don't talk about the Oklahoma-West Virginia game we just watched. We talk about the Under the Radar conferences, and we always like to start out when we remember to do so by defining what Under the Radar is. So, David, can you remind everybody what it means to be under the radar?
Yeah, it's been a fantastic night of basketball so far. Some really exciting games, and on this podcast, we're going to be talking about absolutely none of it. Under the radar is it's essentially any conference. It's the 22 conference that are not the Power Five, so not the Big East, ACC, SEC, Big Ten, or Pac-12. And it is also not one of the multi-bid leagues. So the West Coast Conference is not under the radar. The American, the Atlantic 10, although they might be heading that way, and of course the Big East, not under the radar.
Okay. Everybody else is under the radar, and what we like to do is go through each of those conferences, and I'm actually going to go ahead and pull up on my screen here if this works, and we're not that certain because I'm using this because I'm out of town right now and using a slightly different format than normal, but hopefully we should have the standings on the screen. David, are they there?
Yes, they are.
Good.
I'm not here. I'm not there, but hold on. Oh, wait. Yes, I am here. My television went black, so I had to fix it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, funny things were happening because I saw the puppet's lips moving twice as fast for some reason.
Oh, okay.
Oh, maybe he's talking really quickly.
Yeah.
Anyhow, what we want to do is go through each of these conferences. We're going to discuss them. We're then going to go through our under the radar top 10 lists. We're going to look at some upcoming games, all kinds of fun stuff. And I am starting out here in the Colonial because of this UNC Wilmington team and the incredible start that they're off to. Sitting at right now at 17-2 overall, undefeated in conference, and a team that is getting votes in both polls and close to the top 25 in the coaches poll, David.
I didn't realize that they were that close until you had pointed it out, I think, the other day. But off to a great start. And one of the things that's amazing about their start isn't just their record, but how much of it was done away from home. Their toughest remaining test of the year this Saturday, coming up against a Charleston team that I also really like. I don't think I like them as much as Wilmington. I think Wilmington has a much better shot at landing inside the bubble. But this Charleston team's pretty good. They're fun to watch, and they've looked kind of dangerous this year.
And David, just for correctness, that game is actually tomorrow night. It's not Saturday. That game is Thursday night.
Oh, it is tomorrow. Yeah, okay, yeah.
In fact, that will be the under the radar game of the day. A little sneak preview there. But John, how about this Charleston team, though? Earl Grant has done an amazing job. This Charleston team was 9-24 2 years ago in his first year, 17-14 last year, and already 15-4 this year, after the mess that Doug Wojcik left there as well.
Yeah, that's not bad for Charleston, and this is also a couple seasons after Bobby Cremins had retired. But I guess another surprise earlier in the week was actually Northeastern falling out of the ranks of the unbeaten with a surprising loss against Towson. But at least that sets up the nice matchup that you alluded to between UNC Wilmington and Charleston.
Yeah, I really think this is going to be Wilmington's toughest test remaining on their schedule. The trip to Northeastern, probably their second toughest. And then you got to look at the home games against both of those as well. But they win this one. David, I think that they should be solidly in, and they probably have a little bit of room. Even if they lose this one, I think that this could be a tournament team, even if they fall in the Colonial tournament.
Yeah, they're certainly not doing themselves any favors by losing, and they're really helping themselves out by winning. But I don't think losing knocks them down too much. We at Hoops HD have had them around the 10 line, actually, the 10-11 range. But John Titel, who guesses the committee, we do what we think it should be, and we are correct in thinking that they should be on the 10 line. John Titel guesses the selection committee, and he's guessing they're going to get it wrong. and have them around the 12 line. So if you go by him and you go by the actual selection committee, they still might have a little bit of work to do, but either way, they're right there. And I think either way, don't we sort of hopefully land in the same spot if they win out or come close to it?
Well, I
Let's
guess
hope they don't put the committee to the test like they did with Hofstra last year, who actually won the regular season but lost the championship game to Wilmington.
Well, first of all, I think this Wilmington team is better than Hofstra last year. And second, I guess the other question we have with Wilmington is, let's assume they do get the automatic bid. They do go into the NCAA tournament with 2 losses, maybe 3 losses tops with an automatic bid. I think we're definitely looking at a real good chance at a 9 seed at least.
Yeah, close to the initial ballot or first ballot. I mean,
they would be on my first ballot. Well, actually, they'd be in a total bid already, but otherwise, it'd be on my first ballot.
Yeah.
That's still a pretty big if, though, to try to run the table in a conference as stacked as the Colonial is.
Yeah, but if they do it.
Let's go ahead and run through the rest of the conferences here. I'm going to head on back to the America East, where, David, the team of the people got robbed again.
I know. It's just getting to the point to where it's ridiculous. I am sick of the America East. And I don't think we can do this week with you being on the road, but I think we need to contact the America East League office and try and protest what's being done to the team of the people. They just keep getting robbed.
Okay, can we see their record? Can we see their resume up here or no?
It's black right now, but I think
there's the standings again.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I'm not going to be able to pull up resumes tonight because of a little bit of computer issues I'm having. So, but we do have up there the America East standings at least. New Hampshire with the very disappointing loss to Vermont. And, I mean, it was just a couple of points the game there? Not pretty close, right?
Right. Again, and it's one of those that, they get the win. They don't get screwed out of it. They're in a tie, at least with Vermont. And Stony Brook, I mean, they're going to be easy to beat. But instead, they got screwed. And now it looks like, I mean, if it were to end now, they wouldn't even be hosting a conference tournament game. And this is just outrageous. It just highly upsets me to see what's being done to the team of the people by this league.
I'll give them a little bit here, Dave. They actually would be hosting a conference tournament game with Lowell ineligible as still being transitioned. So they would be the 4 seed. They'd be hosting Albany or Hartford or Maine. But Stalika, how about Stony Brook out to the 4-0 start in conference after going 5-8 non-conference?
Yeah, forget if it was New Hampshire or Albany, but Stony Brook was supposed to be dead in the water in their conference opener, and ever since their comeback, they've been on quite the roll.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, they had that amazing comeback against Albany where they off a 21-0 run to end the game and win it by 2.
And I'm guessing by their record, Albany hasn't been the same since that matchup either.
Yeah, Albany may never be the same again. The entire city.
Let's keep moving through some conferences here. We'll go over to the Atlantic Sun, where Florida Gulf Coast still cruising along at 13-0, and David after a 14-5 overall record, maybe on the verge of breaking into some of our under the radar top 10 lists at this point.
Yeah, getting close. And then one of the other things is that we've been having them around the 15 and 16 line. Do they get inside the 16 line if they keep this up? And I think they do. And they've been looking the part, whereas through much of the out-of-conference schedule, a lot of these teams, North Florida in particular, had just looked really, really putrid. But, again, North Florida riling a little bit in conference here. 3-13 overall, but 2-1 in league play.
Well,
we're talking about teams that are going to run the table. Gulf Coast probably has the best chance because all 3 of their games have been on the road so far. So that means 7 out of their final 11 are going to be in the friendly confines of Alico Arena.
Well, next Wednesday, maybe their toughest game remaining is their trip to North Florida, who, again, preseason, we thought they'd be really good. At this point, not so much.
Right.
Stalika, over in the Big Sky Conference, another team that's one team undefeated here in conference play at Weber State. I think we finally gotten you off that Eastern Washington bandwagon that you just didn't want to let go of all season, though, right?
Yeah, I think last week it was Montana that was able to get the double between Eastern Washington and Idaho. And this week it was Weber State's turn to beat both the Vandals and the Eagles at home.
And David, this seems to be the story every year, Weber State and Montana, and it's almost kind of shaping up to be that again.
Right. After not looking that way prior to conference play beginning, those two not really running away. North Dakota is still right there. Eastern Washington, who's good and still hanging around. But it looks like you kind of get the sense that those two are going to break away from the rest of the league.
A big test actually coming up tomorrow night for Weber State at North Dakota. If
Yeah.
North Dakota is going to stay in this race, they really got to win that one.
They really do. So, yeah, big one tomorrow on, I think, the Altitude Network, I think.
It might be. Check it
Yeah.
out. Big South Conference, and this has been one of our favorite conferences in recent years, and once again doing it here. 3 teams tied at 5-1, 4 more behind them, 2 games back at 3-3. So we got a 3-team race and then a 7-team overall race here, with the top 4 teams going to be actually the top team will be able to host the conference tournament. But David, I think the biggest surprise me here might be Liberty up in this tie.
Very, very much so. I keep waiting for them to fall apart because they had just 2 Div 1 wins coming in the conference play and just looked like they were going to be in the basement of everything. And here they are so far, 6 games in. You know, we're almost through. You know, it's an 18-game format, and I guess we're through the first period if we're talking hockey terms, and they're still up there. Real surprising, 5-1.
I'm going to say, Chad had mentioned already that Wilmington and Charleston is going to be his under the radar game of the day. You really need to do a double feature here because Asheville is going to Winthrop tomorrow night as well.
If it wasn't for how huge I think that Wilmington-Charleston game is going to be tomorrow night, this would have been the game.
Yeah, because, and again, home court advantage at stake here. So it's not just a throwaway game that doesn't mean anything. It means a lot, this Winthrop-Asheville game.
And it's really is a huge week for Winthrop because after that they go to Liberty on Saturday. If they go through, win both these games, I think they're clearly going to be in the driver's seat for this conference. They split them or they go 0-2, then all hell breaks loose.
Right.
Let's keep moving on here and move over to let's see what's up next. The Big West. Should we even bother, David?
Not really. UC Irvine finally looking the part a little bit, finally getting their way up to 500 after – it's amazing when they got in the conference play and started playing weak teams, they started winning a little bit. UC Davis, are they just going to kind of – I get the feeling Irvine's going to run away from everybody.
Yeah, Irvine is coming up their game at Northridge coming up on Saturday. That could be a chance to pull away from them. They already beat Davis. That was Davis's 1 loss. So I agree with you. I think Irvine will pull away. Salika, do you disagree?
Well, I would have had Northridge up there, but they've also lost at home to UC Davis. So if they lose this one to Irvine, you can probably write them off as far as the top seed goes.
And remember that Northridge is actually going to have to travel. They're playing at Hawaii tonight at around midnight, which we're recording this Wednesday evening. And then they got to come back home and play Irvine. So that's a little bit tough to come off of that long trip from Hawaii back home and then go into another tough game like that.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate. Another team that I wanted to mention here, and it's unfortunate we can't pull up their profile. Long Beach State was a team we were really expecting to do well, and they've been utterly disappointing. And I think the problem is they just didn't prepare themselves out of conference for Big West play.
They did not prepare themselves. I'll tell you what, David, there is a way we could do this. I'm going to pull it down here, and then I'm going to go ahead and pull up this Long Beach State profile just because it is very important because we really need to look at this Long Beach team and how awful they
right. I mean,
how just pathetic it was what they did during their non-conference schedule. Here it is. I think we've got it on the screen. And look at this, just cupcake after cupcake they scheduled.
Wichita, who we don't even have in the tournament, and North Carolina, who we don't even have on the one line, Louisville, protected seed, UCLA, Washington. I mean, they've been one of the biggest disappointments this year. Kansas, I just don't think they did enough to get themselves ready for conference play.
I thought Pepperdine was a good test. Give them a little credit.
And then they played Masters College as well. That was a nice 97-78 win. But it is, David, I guess, did they, especially with the team that they had this year, I thought they had enough talent to actually win this conference. Maybe it was too many losses. Maybe was it just too hard of a schedule finally just caught them and they just don't know how to win a game now?
Yeah, I mean, that could be. I in one sense, they say like iron sharpens iron, and if you want to get out there, you have to go and play. And I agree with that to a large extent, but maybe maybe you also have to know how to win, which they haven't really known how to do. But because they haven't looked good in conference play either. They've just looked pitiful.
Well, let me go on here. We actually already discussed the Colonial, so we'll go right over to Conference USA and the home conference of the other team that we really like, we think is inside the bubble right now, able to be in the tournament even if they did not win their conference tournament. That's this Middle Tennessee team, 5-0 in conference, 15-3 overall, including a win over Wilmington.
Yeah, I like this team. I actually like them more than Wilmington. I think their schedule has been a little harder. They don't have quite as many road wins, but if you look at a lot of Wilmington's road wins, it's against sub-200 teams. This Middle Tennessee team is really good. Again, our committee, I believe, gave them a 10 seed the other night. I actually personally had them on my 9 line. And John Titel, who's guessing the real committee, and he's guessing that they're going to also get this wrong, he has them on the 12 now as well. So, but I cannot imagine. It would be a shame if this team ran the table, which they are definitely good enough to do, and did not get inside the bubble. It would just be outrageous.
Well, they do have a real tough week ahead as they're going to RPI 335 Florida Atlantic and RPI 347 Florida International. So real tough week.
Middle Tennessee?
Yes. They're doing the Florida road trip this week.
Are you sure that you're not looking at UAB?
At the Florida International, Florida Atlantic? I thought I had the right teams up there.
Oh, okay.
Oh, and speaking of fraud alerts, Chad, I think we need to remind you of Texas San Antonio's 4-1 record, added with wins against the aforementioned Florida schools, as well as the tough road trip at Southern Miss and UTEP. I don't see them hanging around the top 4 for long.
Yeah, that Texas San Antonio team is going to probably end up battling with the Florida schools and UTEP to not even qualify for the CUSA tournament.
Yeah, I stand corrected. Yeah, that's where Middle's going.
Yeah, Stephen, don't doubt me ever. You should know this by now.
You should never doubt me.
But David, let me talk seriously about the 2 other teams here, not San Antonio, but Louisiana Tech and UAB. Maybe it's the battle for second place, but are these the 2 teams now? Has Rice fallen off of the radar in this conference, and Marshall as well?
It's hard. I don't understand what happened to Rice because they look so good at times out of conference. Marshall, I didn't really attribute that to anything other than maybe having it a little easy at the beginning of conference play, because you have to keep in mind, Chad, they were playing CUSA teams. But yeah, I think UAB seems to be hitting their stride, and Louisiana Tech, another team that's looked pretty good. I've noticed, Chad, on Warren Nolan's page that he has both Middle and UAB going to Florida Atlantic and Florida International. So I'm thinking that might be a mistake on his.
I think that actually, one of them could be playing at. I think that they are maybe traveling as travel partners.
That's right, because they're travel partners. So it makes sense that Middle Tennessee would be all. That's right, and you shouldn't doubt me, Chad.
Okay. Yes, but they will not both be playing Florida International the same night. One of them will be playing International, one will be playing Atlantic, and then they'll switch. Okay.
I would have thought Middle Tennessee and Western Kentucky would be travel partners, but I guess Western and Marshall would be paired together.
They are. It's Western and Marshall, and Chad, you shouldn't doubt me.
All right, let's just keep moving here. And Salika, let me go over to you here in the Horizon League, where what a week by the Oakland, this Oakland Golden Grizzlies team. After the great win at Valparaiso, we were calling them a 10 seed. We were throwing them in. And can you tell us what wonderful job they did following up on that?
Following up, they lost against their travel partner Detroit, which is also a rivalry game of sorts.
That would be RPI 256 after beating Oakland and Detroit. Okay.
And then they followed that up with a loss at home on the Blacktop to Cleveland State.
That would be RPI 213 after beating Oakland, Cleveland State. David, what the hell happened?
I have never seen a team fall more spectacularly to this. This is worse than losing a home bye game. I mean, the caliber of these teams would honestly. I after seeing Detroit, I think they'd sweat out making the Division II tournament if they were to transition down. I have no explanation. There's no excuse for it. I never thought they were good and never said that.
David, Oakland went on beat a team with only 4 losses, with only 3 losses before Oakland beat them against D1 opponents.
And
Then
none
they
at
go
home.
and lose 2 games to teams with 27 combined losses between them. What the hell?
It was. I mean, God, what is the word? It was preposterous. It really was.
Look at their next 2 games coming up at NKU and Wright State. I have no idea what to expect from Oakland. They're
I expect 0-2 right now. That's what I expect.
But they're also capable of beating them both.
Right.
I think Valparaiso is now clearly the favorite again to win this conference. But Stalika, you were on this Green Bay team last week. David, were we wrong by disregarding Stalika's talk about Green Bay?
Well, just because Oakland went out and lost 2 games to teams that have combined 2 games at home to teams with a total of 27 losses doesn't mean we were wrong.
Okay.
I would have had an easier time making the case for Green Bay had they been able to beat Valpo, but that did not happen in the first leg here.
Let's move over to the Ivy League, where we're still just getting to the start of conference play for a lot of these teams, other than Penn and Princeton, really.
Yeah. And amazingly, we already have 2 front runners.
Princeton out to the 3-0 start. We actually still are not getting into the full slate of Ivy League games for one more week here. You're actually seeing Penn is going to be playing St. Joe's and LaSalle, a couple of Big 5 games, non-conference coming up during the next week.
Yeah.
While Yale and Brown, that's a travel partner game, as is the Dartmouth-Harvard game. Is this Princeton's league to lose at this point, or is there somebody else, or do you think that Yale or Harvard can take it still?
Well, I think it's Dartmouth's lead to lose. I think they're
lead.
going to do a spectacular job losing it.
Okay.
I was big on Yale. I don't see how you couldn't think it's Princeton's league to win or lose or whatever Princeton is who will probably win.
Well, Princeton now came off a home win over Yale. So they got half the Yale wins already. If they win at Yale, the only team that may be able to catch them at that point is Harvard, Stalika.
Yeah. Sorry.
I was going to say Yale tried to go for the Penn-Princeton double, but were not able to pull that off. And kind of a surprise here, Brown had also won at Penn during the week, so that puts the Quakers in the cellar for the time being.
Yeah, not looking good for the Quakers to get that 4th spot and get the home games in the Ivy League tournament at all.
Yeah. Question, Chad, and you may not know the answer. In the past, there were no tiebreakers. So head-to-head, it was record and that's it. Now with a 14 tournament, say 4th and 5th are tied. Are there tiebreakers?
Yes, there are tiebreakers now. There will not be a playoff for the 4th spot. There will be tiebreakers head-to-head and the like now to qualify for the conference tournament, yes.
Okay.
All right. Sleek, over the Metro Atlantic, Monmouth finally gotten back up on top after their 2 rough losses early on. Started to look a lot better, including a road win at Canisius this week.
Yep, and it turns out their loss to St. Peter's even isn't too bad by Metro Atlantic standards, because both Monmouth and Canisius seem to have righted their ships. But Ryder, they've gone into quite the tailspin the past couple days.
And David, we got to discuss it.
Yes.
Air handshake. Go ahead.
Steve Patsos of Siena is – I think he should be coach of the year just for this. Things got a little heated between Ryder and Siena the other night. There was a hard foul. A Siena player went up for a dunk, and a little bit of a shoving match broke out. And it looked to me like the players snapped a little bit, but it looked like it was quickly under control. And then I don't understand why Ryder's coach comes running in, screaming like a mad lunatic, yelling at Patsos, yelling at the Siena players. And it's like, what are you doing? I don't know what prompted that. I think that whenever there is a heated things where there's about to be a shoving match or a fight, it's important to go after your guys, let the other team go after their guys. He went after Siena's guys and was really angry about something, and maybe he had every right to be. I don't know what it was that made him snap, but it looked crazy. Game ends, Ryder leaves the court without shaking hands But Jimmy Patsos went down and shook hands anyway, and it was hilarious. If you haven't seen it, search it on YouTube. It was one of the. I laughed for about 10 minutes. It was just fantastic.
I think, in fairness to Ryder, they were trying to de-escalate the situation rather than have the same fracas that Monmouth and Iona had last year. But the conference office is also going to be handing down one-game suspensions to the players who are actually throwing punches. And if you see my tagline, they're also going to be signing their sportsmanship statements with the Metro Atlantic Conference.
Stalika, with that win, Siena actually have 5-3 with a kind of an emotional victory here. This is a Siena team we liked heading into the season. Could this, an emotional win like that help really catapult this team and get them moving back in the right direction now?
Well, it certainly got them back into the top 4 seeds right now, which does help a bit as far as the conference tournament draw goes. But I can tell you Monmouth would not be happy if they see them on their half of the semifinals if this seeding holds true at the moment.
Well, that's because the Metro Atlantic does the conference tournament in such a wonderful way by letting Siena host the entire thing.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
I'm just giving up on some of these conferences,
right?
Honestly.
As Chad and I saw last year, I think the Jersey Shore would be a good option if Monmouth could win the regular season.
Yeah.
David, one of the games of the year in the Mid-American Conference last night, Akron with a huge home win over Ohio. Now, in Ohio's defense, and Stalika, I know you're a big Ohio Bobcat fan here, or at least have been this season. Antonio Campbell, who is their all-everything player, was out for this game. He was also out for only played 3 minutes in their Eastern Michigan loss, which is they now lost back-to-back games. So they kind of have an excuse there, but they also now fallen 2 games behind Akron in the standings.
Yep, and the other thing is this would put them at about, I think, the 4th seed overall as far as the MAC goes. So if they're not able to overtake Eastern Michigan and Northern Illinois, they would be in line to possibly face Akron in the semifinals, depending on how tiebreakers play out with Ball State and Toledo on the other half.
Well, let's take a look at this Akron team in another manner here, David, though. 15-3 overall, actually getting votes in the AP poll. Is this a team that could actually, if they win out to the conference tournament championship game, lose there, maybe get some at-large consideration?
I don't even think it's maybe, because when you talk about winning out in this conference, you're talking about winning in places that are not easy to win at. It's not easy to win at Ohio. It's not easy to win at Buffalo. It's not easy to win at Ball State. You wouldn't have beaten – I guess the question is, in my opinion, it's – how hard is it to win the games you're winning as opposed to necessarily how good are the teams you're playing? And they're not always the same, because some teams, while better than the MAC schools, it's easier to beat them at home than it is to go on the road to Akron or Buffalo or Kent State and win. Now, Kent State's having kind of a down year this year. But if they run the table in this conference, I would be very disappointed if they weren't selected.
If it weren't for Miami beating Northern Illinois a couple weeks ago, we could actually have both Northern and Akron tied for 5-0 right now.
Yeah.
Although Northern did get some revenge last night.
Yeah, I don't know that Northern Illinois or Eastern Michigan are quite as good as Akron. We're going to actually find out Friday night here. Akron's going to be hosting Eastern Michigan. So if Eastern Michigan has anything, we're going to find out real soon.
Yeah.
David, let's head over to the MEAC. And North Carolina Central try to get back up on top there, but how about Morgan State 4-0?
Yeah, I mean, good start for Morgan State. I ultimately think NC Central is the best team in this conference. I just think that they had one slip up. I'm fully expecting them to, if not finish at or near the top, win the conference tournament. I just think they're the best team in the league.
And they did win at Hampton on Monday night, so they did knock Hampton from the ranks of the unbeaten in the MEAC.
Huge game actually coming up in the MEAC on Saturday. North Carolina A&T will be hosting Howard. A&T, the lone remaining team winless against D1 opponents. Howard, number 330 in the RPI, only 2 D1 wins. Real shot to get that first win here.
Yep. And, again, centenary implications in this game.
Let's take a look over at the Missouri Valley Conference. And, Stalika, this is a conference where we had a bit of a battle last night. If you want to go back and watch our bracket rundown show over both this Illinois State and this Wichita State team. and whether these are teams that belong inside the bubble.
But even with Illinois State's win over Wichita State last week, we are starting to see some separation between the top two teams as well as the other eight.
Well, I don't think we need to even discuss the other eight, do we, David? I mean, seriously.
Well, Wichita did have some trouble with Evansville.
Well, if you look down at in 10th place, the Trees, I still don't think you can call that an upset over Butler.
Okay. Yes, to John Rossi, that was not an upset over Butler.
Right.
By the way, Georgia Tech's not going to win any ACC games this year. But let's just talk seriously here. Let's kind of do this debate again, David. Wichita State, do you really think that this is a team that would belong in the tournament right now, despite the fact that they lost the game to Illinois State?
No. Not Wichita. They were not in our field. I don't think any of us that did it, you, myself, or Titel, had them inside the bubble. No.
Well, Salika, you did have them inside your bubble, correct?
I did, but I think maybe that's more of a leap of faith because I don't see any of these other 8 teams really knocking off Wichita, but even Illinois State, I would have in there for the time being, assuming they can stay unbeaten because they don't have quite the same benefit of the doubt that Wichita does.
I do want to point to something, and I realize that Illinois State, the actual wins aren't there as far as the quality of their opponents, but look at their metrics. Like, it's very rare that you see an outright first-place team that's got those kinds of metrics, top 30 RPI, which again, could go down as they go through conference play, not get inside the bubble. I mean, granted, they don't have the wins. The case could be made either way. I picked them last night not because I thought the real committee would take them, but because I just personally thought they're better than their paper. But when you look at the RPI and you consider that it's top 30 and they're an outright first-place team, isn't that the kind of team that almost always gets in?
And speaking of live on tape delay, Illinois State is drubbing Bradley right now. So far, I'm not seeing a post-Wichita hangover here.
That's what, David, you mentioned these metrics. I do have to apologize. BPI rankings are now available. They have not been updated for these screens that we're showing yet. Hopefully by next week's shows, we'll be able to give you some of those ESPN BPI numbers as well, just for those that do follow those metrics. Stalika, the Mountain West, our newest under-the-radar conference. We talked about this Nevada team at the end of the bracket rundown show last night. Now 15-3. 31 RPI, getting votes in the polls. Are they creeping near actually getting inside the bubble?
They would have been had they not lost their first game in conference play. And then there was also Boise State, who was kind of flirting with the top themselves, but also had a blowout loss at home against New Mexico.
And David, huge game actually coming up this next week, actually Wednesday night. Nevada's going to be at Boise. That might be the game that would really decide whether or not they need serious consideration as an at-large team. Don't you think?
Yeah, I agree. And they have to run away from this league, and I think they have to get that win simply because they're running out of chances to get notable wins of any kind. You look at this conference, you have Nevada way up there, bloated record, and then the vast majority, there's only 1 or 2 other teams that are even in the top 100. So I definitely think they need that one at Boise.
And we still just have to keep shaking our head at this San Diego State team, 11-7 overall, and just not where we're used to seeing Steve Fisher's team at all.
Not at all. Yeah, I mean it's alarming how much they've dropped.
Let's move over to one of our favorite conferences, and we're not joking about this. The Northeast Conference, now up to a 3-way tie with Brooklyn, Fairleigh Dickinson, and Mount St. Mary's, which we love to see in a conference that like this where they do use home court in the conference tournament, David.
Yeah, and again, so there's 3 teams vying for the 1 spot, but then the middle of the bracket, which, again, it's conference sites all the way through, also really exciting.
3 teams vying for that 4 seed right now, which would be a home game, and 3 teams vying for that 7 and 8 seed. The 9th and 10th place teams don't even qualify for the conference tournament.
Right, and again, really intense rivalries in this conference. Great, I don't want to say great venues, but electric. Well, no, they are great venues, and there are a lot of electricity around this league, and it's just been, it's white-knuckled every night. And Yeah, it's for the 16 line. In fact, it's going to be unlikely that the winner of this league gets inside the first four. A lot of upsets in other tournaments would have to happen. But a lot of excitement so far. And how about the Blackbirds doing it again after kind of falling off there for a little bit a couple years?
Yeah, I think they were the ones responsible for handing Fairleigh Dickinson their first loss in the NEC.
Yeah.
Right. Actually, and they're going to be at Fairleigh Dickinson coming up on Saturday. So that's a game you want to circle here coming up on Saturday. Definitely going to be worth watching.
Mm-hmm.
John, over in the Ohio Valley Conference, I am all on I'm all on board with this Belmont train right now. Are you with me?
I'm with you as far as Belmont being the top team in the Valley right now, but let's not sleep on a team like Murray State, who's quietly creeping up near the top themselves with wins against Tennessee State and Jacksonville State that are actually looking a little bit bigger now.
Yeah, and that's actually pretty big that they got those wins against the East Division because the majority of their schedule will be against the much weaker West Division. And by winning that division, they would get the 2 seed in the conference tournament, presumably 2 behind Belmont's 1. So that could be – it'll give them a bye right into the conference tournament semifinals as well. So that could be huge for Murray State, David.
Oh, yeah, real big. And with it being in Nashville, I think they would need the double bye.
That's one of the things I love about the Ohio Valley that I wish the Mid-American would also go back to is rewarding your top 2 seeds.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, rewarding your top 2 seeds is good. Playing in Nashville and giving Belmont that and really Belmont and maybe even Tennessee State those, right outside your back door type of games is not quite as good though, David.
No, I again, and this is a bus league. There's nobody in this conference that you really – they could easily logistically set this up to do it at campus sites, yet they choose not to.
Correct. Let's keep moving here. Over to the Patriot League, David, where Bucknell did come up with a nice win tonight over Loyola, now 6-1 in conference, and looking like they're ready to run away, especially after BU suffered an upset loss tonight.
Yeah, which is noteworthy because for the last 2 or 3 years, no team has really run away from this league. I mean, the parity has been unbelievable, and it still really is. You talk about the game tonight, they kind of had to sweat it out, but they clearly – I mean, I think we all thought they looked the best out of conference, and right now they're looking the best in conference as well. Lehigh, another team we really liked, just can't seem to get it going.
Yeah, but Salika, if come up Saturday here, Bucknell is hosting BU. They win that game. They're up by 2 games on everybody.
Yep, and Boston U has had a rough 2-game stretch. They had the loss at Loyola, Maryland, which could be kind of a trap, but losing, I think it was at home to Colgate. That was a bigger surprise, though. So
yeah, that was one of the most shocking games tonight. Yeah,
you're really going to get some separation in the Patriot.
I probably look at Lehigh now as the team that might be the best challenger to Bucknell, but it might be just a battle for second place as well at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Salika, the Southern Conference, go ahead. You want to make your Greensboro argument? I'm going to give you a minute here.
Yep, like I had said in my article, when you're able to beat both of the top teams like Chattanooga and East Tennessee State, and that game against the Buccaneers was also on the road, so they're going to have the advantage at this point. And their only losses against Samford, who is actually in 4th place themselves. If you look at their upcoming games, you got Mercer, Citadel, so not terribly difficult.
I guess it's a situation where I do kind of look at the metrics when you got teams with such close records, and I just see that Greensboro is not even close to the other two, especially in KenPom rating, 137 versus 59 and 60, and same thing with the Sagarins, a huge discrepancy there, and that's why, David, at least in my book, I still like Chattanooga the best out of everybody here.
I do. Chattanooga is really good. They're really deep, and I think they have the highest ceiling. I've just been a little disappointed in Chattanooga because while 12-4 Div 1, I felt like they should have won another game or two, and I liked them so much coming into the year that I thought they had a shot at, getting on the bubble or even inside of it, and I think that ship has sailed. But as far as compared to the rest of the league, I like them. Another noteworthy team like Greensboro having a really good year as far as heading in the right direction of their program, and Samford, another team that's really got it turned around considering the mess they were just 2 years ago, really. But as far as actually being present day as good as Chattanooga or East Tennessee State, I don't think so.
Now, another thing that's also causing Greensboro's power numbers to slide down a little bit was actually a pair of home losses against Virginia and Wake Forest. Clearly, they were swinging over their heads against Virginia, but the Wake Forest game was kind of winnable, but it was not one they were able to pull out.
John, I'm going to disagree with you. When you lose to Virginia and to Wake Forest, regardless of where even if those were home games, those are not games that are going to knock down your power ratings. Those are games that are going to increase your power ratings. So I don't believe that that's the reason why Greensboro's power ratings are where they are. But anyhow, let's move on here to the Southland Conference, David. San State creeping back up there where we thought they would be.
Right. Still a game behind the New Orleans Privateers. Love this team. Like I said last week, I think they're going to win this league and go to the Elite Eight.
You agree with him?
Is Nicholls State still on this page somewhere? Because I'm having
way down in ninth place there. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, what a putrid.
But hey, in David's defense, Sam Houston State is the luckiest team in the nation, so maybe they would end up in the Elite Eight.
Right in front of Eastern Washington.
They're the luckiest team. They're 9-6.
The SWAC. Texas Southern 5-0 after a 2-game lead, and look like they're going to run away with this conference, as they should, David, right?
Yeah. The SWAC is still as bad as the SWAC always is, minus this Texas Southern team. I think they're a clear step ahead of everybody else. They're decent, and no one else is even good.
You do want to keep an eye on Alabama A&M down here. If North Carolina A&T can finally get that first win, 351 in all the metrics right now, including strength of schedule, which is very difficult to do.
And that was after winning at Mississippi Valley, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't think I've ever seen that before.
Look, for some reason, their offense is at 342. They've got to work on getting that a little bit worse. But their defense is 351 at least.
It's amazing. And they've actually won a game.
They won a road game nonetheless, winning at Mississippi Valley State, as you mentioned, John. In a game that completely shocked me quite.
I mean, can they trade mascot names with Cal State Northridge? Because that is really Matador defense right there.
Oh, wow. I mean, to be 1-15 against the worst schedule in the nation is very impressive, I got to tell you.
They're certainly a candidate.
Let's go over to the Summit League.
Another league that's drunk.
Yeah.
And over here in the Summit League, David.
It doesn't even make any sense.
Yeah. Well, Tim Miles used to coach in the Summit League, did he not?
He coached North Dakota State. I don't know if they had transitioned up all the way by the time. I don't remember.
I don't think he likes puppets, David.
Yeah,
I really don't.
No, I don't think he likes Chad.
Sleeka, though. North Dakota State out in the lead here. Fort Wayne now with 2 conference losses. I mean, Denver and South Dakota up there tied in second place. Is this just North Dakota State's league at this point?
I mean, it should be for the time being, although losing big at Denver is usually not something you want to hang your hat on. But even a team like South Dakota I started looking at, I think one of their losses was against Omaha, so not the best sign right there.
That was ridiculous. I mean, they just got absolutely boat raced out in Denver. It was one of the more surprising things of the week. And I'm glad you mentioned that, John, because you just couldn't believe it watching it.
Well, tomorrow night, we've got Fort Wayne at North Dakota State, another game that would have been a contender for the under-the-radar game of the day, but for a couple of the other games we mentioned already.
Yeah, and this conference doesn't do it right. So,
the conference will be in Sioux Falls. So,
yeah.
But only the top 8 teams make it, and South Dakota State might not even qualify for that event.
Right. Oh, they're missing Nagy, I think.
Sun Belt Conference. And Texas Arlington has now fallen 2 games behind Georgia Southern, David. I still want to say they're the best team in the conference, but it's tough when you're 2 games back.
Well, yeah, I think they definitely have the toughest or the highest ceiling, and they've certainly proven it, but they have also proven that they're capable of losing to weak teams. in reality, I mean, a lot of these teams that we thought looked good out of conference, did. You had Texas Arlington, you had Arkansas State winning some big games, you had Troy looking good for a little bit, Little Rock looking good for a little bit, have just been pitiful against teams that, quite frankly, weren't impressive at all out of conference. Like Coastal Carolina looked pathetic, and here they are right up at the top of the league, even ahead in the standings of Arlington. What's going on here? I mean, talk about a league that is entirely upside down.
I'll say Georgia Southern actually won a game at Gulf Coast that really shocked me earlier this year, and maybe that shouldn't have been that big of a shock. Maybe this Georgia Southern team does have something. But Salika, how about Coastal Carolina, Cliff Ellis's team there, first year in the Sun Belt, and suddenly playing like they played in the Big South?
Yep. I mean, that 4-1 record, I guess, is a little bit padded with some wins at home, but I guess the one loss is nothing to sneeze at this point, because this is going to be quite a step up in terms of where they were from the Big South. I also wanted to highlight one of Georgia Southern's wins. They were actually down by 15 at Louisiana Monroe, who's in the cellar right now, but actually managed to come back in that one to stay in front.
And I would just note here, Coastal Carolina, a huge test this upcoming week. They're at Georgia State and at Georgia Southern, so we're going to learn a lot about this team this week.
Yeah.
David, last but not least, the Western Athletic Conference.
Love this conference.
And I know you made the case last night about New Mexico State that, with 2 sub-100 losses and no top 150 wins as an at-large caliber team, and I don't think anybody went along with you, did they?
Well, they didn't, and I knew they. New Mexico's not in the top 150. Man, that's low. Anyway, well, either way, that would be their best win as a home win against New Mexico, who isn't even really looking like an NIT team. This happens sometimes. There's normally 1 or 2 teams every year that I feel the paper does not match how good they actually are, and sometimes it's not even that many. I just think this is a good New Mexico State team, and I can't point to their profile because their profile is pathetic. And I know you don't like the eye test, but let me ask you this, Chet. Like, you raised the question on Twitter, and it was fascinating. If this team played in the Mountain West, which I know they don't, but hypothetically speaking, yes, I think they would win it. I think they're really good.
I agree with you. I think that this team probably could win the Mountain West. I think they would be better than any team in the Mountain West. It was almost half a joke, the second half of my Twitter comment, which was, does that make the whole WAC better than the Mountain West? I didn't really mean that in a serious aspect here, but it was more of a, taking a shot at the Mountain West, quite honestly. But I think New Mexico State would, or at least they'd be right there with Nevada. I don't think anybody else in that Mountain West conference is better than New Mexico State right now.
Right. So, again, if we're looking at Nevada and talking about them as having a shot at getting inside the bubble, and I realize that, again, their credentials are better, their paper is better, but if the statute is the 34 best, not the best resumes, but just the 34 best, am I wrong for arguing that New Mexico State deserves a look?
Salika, you want to respond?
No, I guess focusing a little bit more off the court this week as far as the WAC, because as Chad had alluded to, we're going to be saying hello to the California Lancers in the 2018-19 season.
Yes, the Cal Baptist Lancers, as we mentioned, coming into the Western Athletic Conference in 2 years. They can't do it next year, actually, because you have to be 5 years at D2 before you can move up to D1. They've only been there 4 years. And number 5 in the nation the number 5 in the nation at D2, so they're doing great there. Yeah. But yeah, Cal Baptist coming in. They're 10 miles down the road from UC Riverside, so we need to start a little non-conference rivalry there. I think, Salika, you want to get them a cross-country rivalry with the Longwood Lancers. Maybe we get something going with Houston Baptist as well, so we got a lot of options here for them.
Right.
But on that note, let's go ahead and pull this down here. And if you just give us half a second, we're going to go ahead and move over to our Under the Radar top 10 list for this week. And this is actually, David, this is the 10 best Under the Radar programs as voted in by the 3 of us. And then I kind of did a little bit of a cross-country score here on these teams.
Yeah.
And if we see it right there, David, what do you think about 10 blinks.
I agree with everything so far. It is January 18th.
Okay. Here we go. The number 1 team is Middle Tennessee. This was not
Yeah.
unanimous, though.
I mean, I just think that they're really good. I'm not ready to vote them into the top 25. I know that they're sort of inching close there, as is Wilmington, but they are for real. They're as good as anybody that's going to be inside the bubble.
Right. And Salika, those are the top 2 teams, Middle Tennessee and Wilmington, and these are teams that I think we all agree have realistic at-large shots still.
Yeah.
We maybe almost started to draw the line right below these top 2. We've been drawing at 5 or 6 a lot earlier this season. But next up is this Illinois State team whose case may not be based on their paper as much as winning a conference and being in the top 30s in the RPI.
As we discussed earlier, boat racing their way through the conference if this result against Bradley holds up.
Right. Number 4, Nevada, David. The Mountain West representative that we did say we like actually got more votes than New Mexico State in this field. So maybe.
Yeah. I know. I'm out on an island with New Mexico State.
Number 5, Valparaiso, coming
that's-
back up in there with a huge jump back up after Oakland falls apart, and they pick up a couple wins. You surprised by that, David?
That's a lot higher than what I had them. I
Uh,
think I had them 10th, actually.
and
How much
Salika, we do spell Akron Akron and not OHIO. Have you finally come on board with me?
Unfortunately, I'm not going to have much of a choice.
Okay. Coming in at number 7 is that New Mexico State team that David is so high on. Are getting enough votes to be in our top 10, but not quite up there yet. Number 8, Wichita State, still in the top 10, although after they'd been number 1 for quite a while, that Illinois State loss really knocking them down.
And they just haven't looked. I thought back in November, seeing them play, you and I really liked them, but they have not looked good at all, really, since their tournament down at, what was it, the Battle for Atlantis.
Monmouth is back in our top 10 here at number 9, and closing it out is Chattanooga. The Mocs getting in, not UNC Greensboro. Greensboro did get votes, as did College of Charleston and Texas Arlington. Your thoughts on the list here, Salika?
Chad hates puppies.
Yeah.
I hate puppies.
Wow,
Okay.
that was
That was kind of rude.
All because you're choosing Chattanooga over
my
Greensboro.
thoughts on the list are pretty much what Stalika's are about Chad hating puppies. I mean, when I look at this list, that's what comes to mind.
I think I'm going to give up at this point. I'll tell you what. Let's go through. Do you have any final thoughts here, Stalika, other than my hate of puppies and probably kittens as well, right?
I think we had mentioned them a couple times because of a scheduling quirk in the Big East, but I actually have to shout out to Truman State for actually playing 3 consecutive games on 3 days. I mean, we know about their game at Creighton because the Big East had mandated that game, but prior to that, they had also played 2 top 10 teams in Division II in the Great Lakes Valley Conference. They had actually beaten number 9 Bellarmine and lost to number 10 Southern Indiana, which, if it sounds familiar, that's where Bruce Pearl actually got his head coaching start. So congratulations to Truman State for making it through that stretch without too much in terms of a loss of limb, shall we say.
All right, David.
With Under the Radar, and I realize this is just symptomatic of how college basketball is set up, but when you're watching the power conferences and you see like Virginia Tech and Georgia Tech and these schools that have the chances to make the case for themselves and play their way in, Under the Radar, it's like for everybody else, it's like they have to make their case in November and December, and instead of these big games where there's an opportunity to play their way in, all they really have is games where they're trying not to slip on banana peels. And whereas Valpo, you mentioned earlier how we went from 6 or 7 teams down to 2, and I kind of miss the bracket buster, and I kind of miss something that would manufacture something for the Under the Radar teams late in the year to get a chance at another big notable win. Because look at Middle Tennessee. There's really nothing they can do the rest of the way to make themselves look any better than they already look.
Right, and I agree with you. And you're really looking at these teams here. There are a handful. Maybe it's more than two. Maybe it's three or four that have a real shot at getting that large bid. But we're talking about you've got to win every single game to get
Right.
there. When you're talking about a team that's on the bubble that's plays in the ACC, you don't have to win every single game. You can probably go 500 and still get there because of the quality of what you're playing. So it's almost like you have no margin for error at all. You cannot go out there and have a single bad night, or you're done.
Yeah.
You've got to win your conference tournament. And I agree with you. Maybe there needs to be some other way to do it, but I'm not that certain that I know what the solution is there either, short of expanding the field, which I do not want to
No,
do.
no, we don't want to do that.
But anyhow, on behalf of John Sleek over there, David Griggs down there, I am Chad Sherwood. We do want to thank you for joining us for Under the Radar tonight. We'll be back again next week with more podcasts, and talk to you real soon.